How many of you would be happy to stay in quarantine for the rest of your lives? I'm sure none of you would even wish that on your worst enemy. But much like a pandemic, climate change poses serious health threats to humanity and everything around us. And living in a box forever is not too far-fetched with the worst of climate change to come. Just like how this whole coronavirus situation could have been prevented if we had the measures to stop it, climate change can be controlled if we have the right policies in place to address it before it's too late. So I've always been interested in renewable energy and our carbon footprint, and I had the pleasure of receiving the TELUS Future Science Star Award, and also placing in the state science fair for a speed pump generator that could power streetlights and replace its non-renewable power supply. I'm very passionate about renewable energy, and I plan on shaping my career around it, and therefore I'm very knowledgeable of the threats of climate change. So just like how we are all being affected by the coronavirus pandemic, and have all had to change our daily routine. I'd hate for our future to look as grim as it does now, and it's our duty to try and prevent things like this from happening so that future generations don't live their lives cooped up in a box like we are right now. So, what I'm going to be proposing is that the United States should adopt a carbon tax policy nationwide to slow harmful carbon emissions, and that would incentivize more eco friendly energy sources. So, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas that works to trap heat close to Earth and is derived naturally and by human activity. It helps Earth hold the heat it receives from the sun so it doesn't all escape back into space. So, why is it bad? Well, throughout Earth's history, whenever the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere has gone up, the temperature of Earth has also gone up. And when the temperature goes up, CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere go up even more. As we continue to burn more and more fossil fuels, this relationship threatens to dictate which living things can survive on this planet, creating a huge environmental disaster if not controlled. And today, CO2 accounts to about 76% of total greenhouse gas emissions. And according to the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions, this percentage is increasing every single year. Carbon emissions contribute to climate change. Not only do they pose serious threats to our environment, such as effects on water supplies and weather patterns, changes in growing seasons for food crops, and how it threatens coastal communities with increasing sea levels, but it can also pose serious health problems to us citizens. In a 2008 study conducted by Mark Jacobson, um, he proves that for every degree Celsius the temperature rises because of CO2 levels, ozone pollution can be expected to kill an additional 22,000 people via respiratory illnesses, asthma, and emphysema. And when questioned about this research, Jacobson said this is a cause and effect relationship, not just a correlation. So, along with direct health effects due to high CO2 concentrations in our atmosphere, higher temperatures pose other various threats to our health. One of the main indirect effects is on infectious diseases, and this topic is especially important now due to recent circumstances and how the pandemic we are experiencing now is negatively affecting every sector of our lives. So, vector-borne infectious diseases such as malaria and dengue fever are going to spread farther due to longer, warmer seasons in the future. And unfortunately, we are already seeing this happen, and it's only going to get worse. According to a CDC report published in 2018, diseases such as Lyme disease, dengue, and Zika tripled between 2004 and 2016 due to longer, warmer seasons. And as of now, the US has taken very few measures to enforce policies on manufacturers and major producers of emissions. The US is now the world's top oil and gas producer, and it's projected to continue expanding output in the future. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has started the process of pulling out of the Paris Accord and has been working to roll back the regulations set and adopted by the Obama administration. According to the International Energy Agency, the US has the largest per capita greenhouse gas emissions, far exceeding all other countries. So not only does bailing out of the Paris Accord make us look bad as a nation, but laxing the policies already enforced and creating incentives for companies to pollute the air we breathe is selfish towards us citizens in the countries that are making impressive strides to make the world a better place for us. The science and lack of effective policy on carbon emissions is sobering. Every year we reach new records in global temperature. Make no mistake, without concerted action, the very future of our planet is in peril and irreversible. So, in order to curb the amount of CO2 emissions in our country, the United States should adopt a nationwide policy, commonly known as a carbon tax, and allocating that revenue to stimulate the economy and to address other societal problems, such as public health, so that we have the measures to control an incipient epidemic such as the one we are faced with today. So, a carbon tax is a fee imposed on the burning of carbon fuels. And with a carbon tax in place, owners of vehicles that don't follow a set emissions regulation and industries who burn carbon fuels would pay a tax on these carbon fuels. And if set high enough, it becomes a monetary disincentive that incentivizes clean energy across the markets and car owners alike, simply by making it more economically rewarding to move to a non-carbon fuel and energy efficient products. Many countries in Europe and Australia, Chile, and many others have already adopted a carbon tax, and it's working miracles. In an analysis conducted by Simon Evans in 2017, UK CO2 emissions have fallen drastically due to implemented carbon tax. They experienced a more than 7% decrease in CO2 emissions while keeping the market just as stable as it was before it was implemented. And as a result, UK wind farms generated more power than coal in 2016. Regardless of where you stand politically, a nationwide carbon tax unites both conservatives and Democrats alike, creating incentives that attract different minded people. For many Democrats, an imposed carbon tax is appealing in that an imposed tax through the economy is the only way to get energy companies and startups to ramp up their low carbon investments and search for conservation strategies, where currently carbon pollution has no consequences. For many conservatives, it could start a race for lower emission technologies, which could give energy companies an edge on competitors and potentially create a whole new market with renewable energy and fossil fuel companies competing to create new technological advancements. And many of those on both sides who don't believe in climate change or just don't care about it can also be advocates for a carbon tax if it acts as an alternative to more EPA regulations. So, in conclusion, with health being a major issue today than it was ever before, it is important for us to reconsider how we go about our daily lives, and we must change our perspective on health and sanitation. In the past month, we can all see that lockdown policies have been an effective measure by governments across the world. Much like we have seen with COVID-19, climate change should be an issue that is tackled and addressed by the government, regardless of pressures from the market, but before it's too late this time. Yes, the lockdown has halted production and is disrupting the market, but I think that the situation has taught me to look at the economy in a completely new perspective. If we want to be more resilient to pandemics and avoid the worst of climate change in the future, we must create a system capable of scaling back productions and emissions in a way that does not result in the loss of any livelihood. And I think that a carbon tax is a good way to start. Thank you for listening.